Hello again. This is going to be a different video. It's back to books again, and it's one of a set of three I'm going to make on basically the inheritance of books. When we're children and when we're even young adults, we all become guilty of throwing things away that were once owned by our parents and cherished by them, and then we see no value in it and ditch it. There are many things, if I look back, I regret actually throwing away. Things that my parents really cherished and loved. I'll make one exception to that, and that's books. When my father passed away and my mum passed away, lots of things went from the house, but one of the things that didn't go were the books that he'd inherited from his father, and books that he had collected himself as a boy, and there were many of them, different volumes, complete volumes. He just adored reading and adored collecting books, and I bundled them all up. I put them into boxes, didn't look at them at the time, but I've now got all those books. And also when I was a child, I had uncles. I had one uncle who was a headmaster at a school in London, and he, when I was only 6 years old, gave me a most beautiful set of books, which I'll be dealing with in a later video. And it's just marvellous that those sort of things should happen. And I've still got all those books. But today I am going to deal with just two books in particular. When I was 9 years old, I was visiting my grandfather with my dad at that time, and they were talking, and I wasn't particularly interested, but what I was interested in was my grandfather's bookshelf at the end of the room. They didn't have a lot of money, the room wasn't elaborate or posh or anything, it was quite dull, but at the end of the room was a bookshelf absolutely stashed with books. So I went over there and I found two books on that bookshelf. They were quite heavy, and I pulled them down. And here they are. That's one of them. I'm not going to. The other one's exactly the same. I'm not going to lift that up. This was the complete book of thrillers, and the other one was a complete book of mystery, which included ghost stories as well. And they were the books that I took down. And when I opened them up, some of the diagrams, some of the pictures in them were scary, to say the least. And I read one of the stories, and I don't think I slept that night. I wasn't allowed to remove the books from my grandfather's house. I had to leave them there. But every time we visited, I made a beeline for these books, and would read another story, even though it scared me rather a lot. When my grandfather passed away, my father inherited the books, and I don't quite know what happened to them then. But when he passed away, I've inherited them. I've got the books now. And the other day I was looking through my book collection, and there they were on the shelf, both these books. And oh, they're wonderful. They were printed by Oddham's Press in 1935. I looked at them when I was 9, so that must have been in the 50s, and now, and this is a really exciting bit of this, I'm in my 70s, and I have a 9-year-old grandson who is very interested in books. So a bit later in the video we'll see where that actually takes us. But first of all, let's have a look at these books. And just talk a little bit about them. So there they are. The one with the policeman on the front is 50 Masterpieces of Mystery, and the second one with the daggers on the front is the Great Book of Thrillers, and that includes, they both include ghost stories as well, hence the rather scary introduction to this video. They were both published by Autumn's Press in 1935, and they contain not only some most brilliant stories, but also the most marvellous illustrations as well, which I think adds to the menace that some of the stories contain. As for the illustrations, you can see that they're drawn and ink drawn, and they carry titles as well, but they show a sense of menace, some of them, and very well fit the stories. Again, very well drawn, a number of different illustrators involved there. I'll do some credits at the end of this video. Let's turn over and try and find some more. There are so many of them. Oops, there's a book on the floor. I don't think I did it. I think that was an unseen hand. But yes, they're not every story is illustrated, but a number of them are. Oh, here's one coming up here. He seemed to crumple in his chair and shrink under her stare. But as I say, when you're reading these stories, it's quite interesting when you get to the picture to see how well depicted it's been. So there's just a few examples. Here's a particularly scary one, Madame Crowl's Ghost. She was driving on right for me. Her old shriveled hands creaked as if she was going to claw me. Okay, well, you get the idea. So those were two books that I'm very proud to still own, and they still occupy a place on what I call my secret bookshelf. I have a staircase, and down the bottom of the staircase there's an alcove, and in the alcove I've got some fairly odd books that I've been given or collected, but these two particularly have a place on that shelf. Not visible to everybody, but they are there. The timeline, again, let me say, they were published in 1935. I first looked at them when I was 9 years old. That was in 1954, and now it's 2018, and those books are still on the shelf. Now, let's have a look at a very special guest, my grandson, Oliver. He's 9 years old, and let's see if he has an interest in these books. Well, I don't think he was that scared, really. In fact, he's not particularly interested in those sort of books. He's currently reading the biography of Steve Jobs, which may or may not be as scary. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I'm going to make some more on some of the books that I've inherited, and some more interesting books. So I hope you switch on to watch those. But in the meantime, please, if you have books, value them. Books are good friends, and they deserve to be shared. And I hope the ones I've showed you today, although not everybody's cup of tea, will be valued and passed on by Oliver when he eventually owns them.